it's a little bit worthless at times in a bluegrass band, isn't it? Folks, it's Sean Brock back with you. Talk about a few things about the mandolin here, especially for those of you who might be starting out, having a little trouble. Please subscribe, and anything that you're trying to learn, trying to work on, let me know. I'll do my best to help you out, upload a video to you, and tell anybody you know interested in mandolin or interested in guitar or reviews, send them my way. So I want to talk to you about chopping. A buddy of mine called up the other day, and we were kind of joking around. He said he had a mandolin student, and he said, "Man, how do you teach somebody how to chop?" It's the most basic thing, but it seems like it's the hardest thing to get across to somebody. How do you teach a bird how to somebody how to chop? And instantly, Barney Fife and on Andy Griffith came to mind. Barney in the choir, and they wanted him to do a recitation. He said, "Can you tell a bird to just go chirp, chirp, chirp? A bird has to sing, you know." So I had to think about, how did I learn to chop? I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, and then started playing the mandolin in the 90s, and there were a multitude of good players: Adam Steffi, Sean Lane, Wayne Benson, Alan Bobby, several others, Doyle Lawson. I can't name everybody. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. But they all had a little different sound. And, there was one guy that used to get way down the fingerboard and do this, and and that had its place. Just barring across the strings, just deadening the strings. And that works for some people, and that's a fine style. But then there's the bigger chop that we all seek, just that woofy, just a bam, just something hard, percussive but solid. This is nothing but percussive, and it's perhaps you want something a little more solid than that. So here are some rules I want you to keep in mind when you're chopping, especially if you're just starting out. Number one, the worst thing you can do is to allow your chop to ring. If I'm playing Little Cabin Home on the Hill and I'm going, it's awful. It's awful for everybody else in the band, in the jam session, because what it does is interferes with the timing. So we need to mute that. We need to cut that off. And that's the part that's hard to explain to people. How do we cut it off? That sounds simple, but it's hard to do when you're first getting started. So if you make this chord, this G chord, the dynamics of what you physically need to do are the complete opposite of what you would think you need to do. Initially, I thought you've got a solid hold, you've got your strings pressed down, and you play and you let up. But it's, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand. But it's actually the complete opposite of that. You start the chop really with your left hand. So you squeeze the strings closed, and then you strike with your right. And as you're striking, you're releasing tension. If you watch my hand, and when I throw the right hand, it's going to be. So the pick is actually hitting the strings as my ring finger and my pinky are releasing. And if you just take your, if you imagine this, if we, we could slap the mandolin neck with two hands at the same time, but chopping is not that way. Chopping, instead of this, it's more of this. I'm going to exaggerate it for you. Left hand, then right. And you want to get those two not synchronized, but close. So we'd start out in our mind thinking, okay, if I speed that up, speed it up a little more. And that's what happens with the release. It's release, hit, release, hit. And that's kind of the basics of the left hand movement. Now, talking about the right hand, another thing that you want to be leery of, and you can always tell when a mandolin player is playing something real fast, big. And you can tell when they get tired because you start to see that arm go. And there again, the timing starts to suffer. You are the drummer in a bluegrass band. You are absolutely as responsible for keeping time as a bass player. I know for me, when I'm playing guitar, I'm worried about the bass and the chop. And I'm mostly worried about, I get more worried about the chop than anything. If somebody has a bad chop, man, it's hard to try to carry good rhythm. So a lot of times if you watch good players, see how my arm is going double? Bump, 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 bump. The taking things double does two things. For one thing, it keeps you pushing the beat at the appropriate spot, and you're not just guessing at the timing. You're keeping the timing. You're synchronized, kind of like a guitar player. And it also allows you to emphasize, like the 1 and the 3 of each measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. You can emphasize more beats rhythmically. You can't do that if you're just doing this, because you'll absolutely, doing a single wrist movement, you'll absolutely not be able to emphasize other beats in the measure. So that's the reason that it's important to practice a double wrist movement. The other thing is, once you get that movement down, here's another problem that a lot of people have. They think that in order to create drive and energy in a song, that they must emphasize every beat in the measure. I mean, you'll have a song that's going 1 eanda, 2 eanda, and they'll be emphasizing every eanda coming along. You can't do that. You absolutely, you can step on the bass just like I was doing. But you don't want to do that every beat. You see how I leave some straight? And I'll emphasize like the first beats of a chord. You know, when you change keys or at the top of a song. See how I emphasize the first few beats? I emphasize the very top beat of the song, and then when we changed chords and went to D, I emphasized that. And it flows. It flows nice there. But once you get the double wrist action down, do not get in the habit of going. Very annoying. Very annoying. Overkill. And it's, to me, having a good chop is, well, Adam Steffi had said that he was satisfied playing good rhythm and never taking a break, never taking a solo. That's how much he enjoys the rhythmic offerings of the mandolin. And I have to agree with that. It's very important. You have an extreme amount of control in a jam session or in a band situation when you carry good rhythm on a mandolin and have a really good chop. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys out, and write me with any questions, and please subscribe. Take care.